Let's begin. Up on the screen is the check secret information trigger that we want to write a test class for. On the top right of the screen, I've started our running list of conditions that our test class needs to meet. In the first line of our trigger, we immediately see in the trigger entry criteria that we need to either create or update a case. That's our first condition, and I'm adding it to the list. This entry criteria is a little different than the one we saw in our last trigger because this includes both before and after keywords. For the purposes of test classes, those keywords don't really matter at all. Any case insert will fire all before and after triggers, and the same would be true for updates. Next line, our trigger is creating a string that'll be reused throughout the trigger. No problem. This line will always be executed as long as our trigger executes. No new conditions to add to our list. The next block of code behaves similarly. We're creating a list and hard coding values into it. Nothing special is preventing this code from running. For example, there are no if statements around it. So I know this block will always run as long as our trigger runs. No new conditions to add to our list. Next line where we create a new list variable, again, the same thing. No new conditions here. Now we enter our trigger loop. The trigger loop will always have the same criteria as the trigger entry criteria. As long as we satisfy the entry criteria, we know trigger.new will have records in it and our trigger loop will run at least once. We've already noted the entry criteria in our running list, which is to create or update a case. Moving on. An if statement. The common culprit of missed code coverage. I am mentally prepared for this. This if statement says only run the code inside me if the case subject is not the same as our child case subject, which is, warning, parent case may contain secret info. I simplify this and say our case subject can't begin with the word warning. Noted and added to our list. We will use a different case subject. Entering our if statement, we have a loop. This is a for each loop that iterates across every value in the secret keywords list created earlier. As long as this list has at least one value, we know this loop will run at least once. And remember, we generally only need the loop to run once. There are no bonus points for running the same line of code multiple times. The secret keywords list will always have values since we manually add in hard-coded values in our trigger. So I know this loop will run. No new conditions here. Another if statement. Good, this is keeping us on our toes. This if statement has two conditions which must be true if we want the code inside it to run. First, our case description can't be null. Noted and added to our list. Second, our case description needs to contain a secret keyword inside it. The secret keyword is not case sensitive because it's checking using the contains ignore case method. I add this condition 2 to our list. Now for all the lines of code in our if statement. These lines will always run as long as the parent block, the if statement, is true. We already have those conditions in our running list, so nothing new to add here. Next line of code is creating a new variable. No concerns here and no need for new conditions. Now a for each loop. Looking at this loop, we see that it'll only run if the cases with secret info list has at least one value in it. I look backwards in our trigger to see when values are added to this list. Here's the key line. Cases are added to this list whenever we satisfy the if statement around it. Those conditions are already included in our running list, so nothing new to add here. The next block of code will always run as long as the loop enclosing it runs. We've got those conditions already on our list, so I know this block of code will run. The final line of code in this trigger is the DML. Its parent block of code is the trigger itself, so as long as the trigger runs, this line will run. No new conditions to add. And that's it. The hardest part of our test class is done. Here are our test class requirements. 1. We need to create or update a case. 2. Our case subjects cannot begin with the word warning. 3. The case description cannot be null. And 4, the case description must contain a secret keyword. We have our goals, now it's time to code.